Сайн байцгаана уу хүн үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор хил хязгааргүй малын эмчнэр ба агрономичид нэртэй олон улсын байгууллагын Монгол дахь суурин төлөөлөгч Romain Brillie оролцож байна.
Роман Брилле. Тэрээр Франц улсад ашигын төлөө бус байгууллагын менежмент тогтвортой хөгжил, эдийн засгийн чиглэлээр магистрийн зэрэг хамгаалсан бол Хонконгод соёл хоорондын менежментийн чиглэлээр мөн суралцжээ. Европын болон Монголын бизнесийн байгууллагуудад компанийн стратегидаа тогтвортой байдлыг хэрхэн тусгах талаар зөвлөгөө өгч ажиллаж байсан. Түүний ажилдаг AVSF байгууллага нь Монгол улсад тасралтгүй 12 жилийн хугацаанд үйл ажиллагаагаа явуулж байгаа бөгөөд малчид олон малчдын хоршооллыг дэмжин ажилласаар байгаа юм а.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please tell us about this border without border agronomists and veterinarians. What is this about?
So, AVSF, which is the shorter name for my organization, is an international NGO based in France, which operates in, let's say, around 20 countries, developing countries in the world, on rural development projects. So our mission as an NGO is to support vulnerable herders, farmers around the world in order to help them live more decently from their own productions, from their own income. We've been operating in Mongolia for 12 years now.
Wow, okay.
And our, let's say, main strategy in Mongolia is to strengthen the resilience of the nomadic herding lifestyle. For that, we try to work on the conditions, the factors that will help the livestock herders of Mongolia being more resilient. So natural resources management, but also the productivity, improving the productivity of herds, as well as developing access to market for their products.
Well, you said to help Mongolians to have, nomads have more resilience through increasing their productivity and lifestyle, keeping the lifestyle. It sounds very difficult at this time when we have half of the country in Ulaanbaatar city and even more people want to come to the city. So tell us about the situation, because you have a 12 years experience in Mongolia, you have been mostly in countryside. Tell us why is that happening?
So, well, one of the factors explaining this rural exodus is, let's say, the natural disasters that happen in a more and more frequent way, which are the dzud. For sure, the livelihoods of Mongolian herders are very, very vulnerable to these harsh weather events. We have noticed that in the past 20 years, the frequency of these harsh weather events is increasing. And in the meantime, let's say the vulnerability of herders and of herds to these natural disasters is also being increased. One of the reasons for this is let's say the degradation of the Mongolian pastureland. So as you know, there has been a switch in the 1990s from a planned economy to a market economy, which ended up with the privatization of the herds, which were previously state-owned. In order to better cope with this natural vulnerability, the herders have put in place a strategy which is based on capitalizing. They're capitalizing on livestock numbers, and especially on the type of livestock which is the most profitable for them, which are the Kashmir goats. We've switched from a situation where there were 25 million livestock heads in the 1990s to up to more than 60, even 70 million maybe by the end of this year. So it's a tremendous increase. This increase has been at the origin of degradation of the pastureland. More than 64% maybe of the Mongolian pastureland is degraded in some form.
64%.
Yeah.
Okay, before we go into that, I would like you to tell the audience I mean, what you have been doing, why you are here, and which particular area you were living in Mongolia.
Okay, so what I've been doing before this, right?
And then during this project too.
During this project too. Okay. So my background is I'm a business professional, so business school, with a specialization in management of organizations of the social economy, which are cooperatives, mutuals, etc.
You are a Frenchman.
And I'm a Frenchman as well. I've been working for the past 10 years mostly as a consultant in consulting organizations and as an independent consultant advising businesses on their sustainable development strategy, which is how to better integrate sustainable development as a, let's say, a core asset of their company strategy, something that will generate revenue for them. I've been working mostly in Europe and in Mongolia for the last 5 years. And I started working with AVSF in my current position a little bit more than 1 year ago. Yeah.
And which area you have been visiting in Mongolia?
So during the last 5 years, I've been mostly to central IMAX, which are so Bayan Khongor, Arkhangai, and Dornogobi, which are the 3 IMAX where we have projects, as well as some other IMAX like Sohbata, Tuv, Khenti.
Монголоор ярьдаг.
За зүгээр ойлгож байна.
Ойлгож байгаа. Хөдөө айл хонж исэн үү?
Хонж исэн.
Хонж исэн. Ямар байна унтахад?
За зүгээр сонирхол тавьсан.
Гэртаардаг уу? Гэртаарсан уу?
Дараагүй.
За. So let's go back to degradation of lands. Yes, in fact, we have that substantial degradation. At the same time, substantial growth of goat in particular, of all colors.
Right.
And I mean, 2-3 times even this goats population, right, increases so much. And you have been doing a project called Sustainable Kashmir.
Exactly.
What do you mean?
So starting from what we have noticed, this issue of land degradation, and the fact that that it's a real threat for the the sustainability of the nomadic lifestyle in Mongolia. We've tried to see how we could design a system that would help, in the meantime, let's say, foster the resilience of this nomadic herding lifestyle, and helping them generate additional income. So we are now working, as you mentioned, on the 5-year Sustainable Kashmir program, which is funded by the French Fund for the Global Environment and the European Union.
So by the French government and European Union.
Exactly.
Are funding your project.
Yes.
On creating, if possible, sustainable Kashmir in Mongolia.
Exactly.
Okay.
So by sustainable Kashmir, what do we mean? And what are we trying to do? We are trying to influence the practices of the herders in terms of pasture land management. As you may know, at the moment there is no regulation in Mongolia, and for pasture land management especially, no regulation for the livestock numbers. Starting from there, we need to have the herders being able to collectively manage this pasture land and to take decisions in order to adapt their practices, and especially the number of livestock, to what we call the carrying capacity, which is the capacity of a given area to accommodate a certain number of livestock. However, what we do not want to do is to actually reduce the income of the herders or to increase their vulnerability, because they need this income to live properly. This is why we've thought about a market mechanism using herder cooperatives to be able to compensate the efforts that we are requesting from the herders in terms of sustainable pasture land management. And for that, we've seen, okay, we've got this high level of interest on export markets, especially European, American, Japanese market, about green products and sustainable products. If we manage to connect improved practices of the herders to market opportunities for sustainable product, then we may be able to have a system which would be self-sustaining, which would help the herders gain a better income, better manage their pasture land, and then be better resilient to climate shocks.
See, interesting thing. When you talk about the Pastureland management, together by the collective of the herdsmen, when you talk about collective or cooperative, there is, some bag level in Mongolia, right?
Exactly.
You talk about at the bag level or inter-bag level. What do you talk about?
So in our case, for the pastureland management, it is organized by what we call, on the basis of what we call pasture user groups. So we use a methodology which is well proven, which has 10 years of experience in Mongolia, from the Green Gold project, which is to organize herders.
What's the name again?
Green Gold project,
Okay.
yes, which is a partner of this project as well. To organize herders into groups, which would define the common boundaries of their pasture land and define plans in order to better use it, pastureland management plans.
No, it's mostly the bag territory.
So in one given bag, you can have several pasture user groups.
Yes.
Yes.
So, but your several pasture groups are within a bag, because
bag,
then
yes.
otherwise you will cross the border of another bag, which may create another complaint, which are frequently happening in this country, when in particular Zud is happening spotly.
Yes, that's a very good remark indeed. Some pasture user groups borders are aligned with the, let's say, administrative borders of bag, but not all, which means there is also a very important thing, which is to integrate those pasture user groups into a wider governance at a SUM level, and also between different SUMs, in order to make sure, as you mentioned, that those conflicts can be regulated.
Okay, let's do. You are actually, your project is more than just pastureland management or sustainable Kashmir or green products. This is a matter of increasing productivity through cooperation, through teamwork within the bag. And how is it working? Do you see the difference of productivity? Do the Mongolians see their herds that we are much better together than that separately?
So what we notice is that within the herder organizations we work with, so those pasture user groups, but also those cooperatives, there is a very good dynamic, which means thanks to the work we have done on awareness raising, on explaining why it's important to actually better manage pastureland and what benefits they can derive out of this. These collective initiatives are really taking shape. One good example is the level of attendance we have at the all-member meetings, the general assemblies of these herder organizations, where quite a significant number of people actually come and attend, which is not easy for them.
At the bag level, you organize that, you said, Congress? Or?
So we've got, at the PUG level, pasture user group level, we have 2 meetings a year. Each pasture user group has to meet twice a year.
Okay.
For the cooperatives, they have once a year what we call a general assembly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in general assembly, that means in this bag, say the herds, you call it herds users group.
Yes.
The pasture users group, sorry. Pasture users group. This group, one group, right? How many groups are in bag? Because Mongolia is huge territory, so.
It depends. It depends because the basis of those pasture user groups is the, let's say, an ecological area, which is a common pasture land. So you can have up to 5 or 10 pasture user groups in one bag.
Within bag, okay.
Within the bag.
So within the bag, they talk twice a year, basically.
Yes.
About how productive they are, what they can improve, etc.
So they are going to talk mostly about pastureland management.
Okay.
One thing I think I need to explain is that the productivity improvement part of the program is mostly directed at the cooperatives, which means with the herders, which are members of the cooperatives, we work on such issues such as animal health, animal nutrition, animal breeding on goats, with one key objective, which is to improve the quality of the product, of the Kashmir. Our program is located in Bayan Hongorai Mag, We work over 5 sums there, Shinjinst, Bog, Jinst, Pumbogo, and Batsaran sums. Some of them are famous for the quality of their cashmere, especially...
some of them are and benchmark for cashmere products for all over the world.
Yes.
Yes.
Like Shinjin Sum, for instance, which is very famous for the white cashmere of Mongolia. So we select animals which would be good breeders, good reproducers, and introduce them in the herds of the cooperative members. We train the members, the herders, in order to make sure that they can properly manage these animal breeding programs, and with a final objective to improve the quality of the cashmere.
At the end, it is not the issue of quality. It is not the issue of quantity of goats. It's a quality of goats as well, right?
Yes, it's also an issue of quality. It's mostly an issue of quality. We want to switch from a logic of, as I mentioned, capitalizing on numbers, so big herd, to capitalize on the individual value of the animal. So how much income can one herder get from one animal? To make sure that if one day they decide to reduce the number of animals they have, they would still be able to have the same income, or even maybe a better income.
So how much, I mean, what we talk about, how much fund is needed for that, and how much fund you have been using for that?
Okay. So at the moment, I consider that this program is an experiment. So it's a relatively small scale, 5 sums, 5 cooperatives, maybe in total 1,000 herders involved. In terms of funding, we have 1,650,000 euros over 5 years to spend on that program.
For 5 years?
For 5 years, yes.
And if there is anybody in presence in this spot from you, from the organization, or not?
Yes, we have a team of 10 people based in Bayern-Hongoraimag.
All French people?
So we have one French person, and the rest is Mongolian.
I see.
Yeah, the rest is
so
Mongolian.
You're hiring local Mongolians to be a team and to work with local nomads?
For sure. Even in terms, a big part of our project is related to capacity building. Capacity building of the pasture user groups, of the cooperatives. So it's much more logical and easy that we have some Mongolian staff to be able to explain directly to the herders in their language.
So they are staying constantly there, permanently in Bayern-Hongoraimag in 5 summers, traveling in between summers?
So they are traveling between the 5 sums. They are based at the IMAG center, but very, very frequently present on the field.
You talked about also export.
Yes.
What export you talk about? Is it going successful? What are those hurdles you meet?
Okay. So we're indeed speaking about exports. For sure, if we want the herders to be able to have, let's say, a price premium for sustainable cashmere, the key market is the export market, because this is where the customers are sensitive to these issues. This is where the brands also are sensitive to these issues for different reasons that I may explain you afterwards if you are interested. What we're talking about is exports. There are 2 kinds of export. The first is export of the herd cashmere from the cooperatives directly to the export customers. So in that sense, in 2016, there has been a little bit less than 1 ton of the herd cashmere, which has been sold to brands mostly, so luxury brands, which was sold by the cooperatives to those brands. The second type of export is to try to encourage trilateral partnerships between the Mongolian cashmere industry, the cooperatives we work with, and some customers on export markets. So here, what we do is that we try to raise the profile of this sustainable and Mongolian cashmere on export markets, saying we have these cooperatives which are already engaged into a program of a better pastureland management, of improvement of the quality of the cashmere. We have Mongolian processors which are now capable of producing high-quality garments that would be suitable for the European market or other markets. And we have a brand which is interested by this sustainable cashmere concept and try to connect the dots.
Is it working?
It is starting to work.
It is
starting to work.
Because it's in the interest of every players.
I think, and our position is that it is indeed in the interest of every player, because you know, it's difficult for Mongolia to differentiate, to compete on price, especially on the cashmere sector, in the cashmere sector, because you've got a very powerful neighbor, which is China, and which is producing at much lower costs.
So China has more goats.
China has more goats. China has a cheaper labor force. China has heavily invested in the cashmere sector with high level of subsidies. So it's very difficult to compete on price. But in the meantime, there is this great opportunity, which is uniquely Mongolian, which is the image that the customers have of Mongolia, which is a country which is pristine, with a pristine environment, with a very strong cultural tradition around this nomadic lifestyle, where there is a story to tell. And Mongolia can tell that story, and with well, the right level of investment in order to produce proofs that the Mongolian Kashmir sector can be sustainable, there would be a great opportunity to differentiate.
So now we talk about the product and marketing, right? Promoting. And now obviously you are yourself business consultant person, and you see the industry now with from even the sport all the way to the final products we all wear, Kashmir, etc. And very interesting observations about this image that you can sell. Why are Mongolians not doing that for quite some time? What happened? How do you see that? What's wrong with that?
That's a hard question. I think okay. The first thing is that for that you need a high level of coordination between actors, which is you
missing coordination.
You need people in the private sector mostly, and also at government level, and also with the primary producers, the herders, to all agree on the fact that they have to collaborate in order to be able, at the end of the value chain, to have a sustainable product, which requires, well, as I said, a high level of coordination, which up to now has been difficult to achieve. The second thing is the way the Mongolian value chain is structured, which is it is heavily depending on intermediaries, on changers, which means it's also difficult at that very moment for the Mongolian processors to directly reach the herders and directly influence their practices.
Understand. We will go back to that. So there are 2 points you're saying.
Yes.
One is why Mongolian Kashmirs are not high profile in the world, while it has so many good things to promote, like image.
Yes.
And the problems for that is, first, high-level coordination of all players, government, herdsmen, and producers. Second, value chain, the heavily concentrated on changer. But speaking about the changer, because Mongolia is such a big land, right? 3 times more than France, for example. The transport costs, collecting Kashmir and bringing to the market, this is a very important part of value chain. And it will be too expensive for a herdsman to bring all this way to the Ulaanbaatar city. So is it possible to avoid or decrease the role of the changers?
Yes, it is possible. We've got some of the companies, the Mongolian companies that we collaborate with, have already started looking very seriously into how they can work directly with other organizations. One thing which is difficult, if you look at how they work at the moment, is that the risk, I mean, the Kashmir value chain works because there are changers. If there were no changers, as you mentioned, it would not work.
That's the reality.
That's the reality. One of the things we notice is that, for instance, the risk is transferred to changers. If I take an example of a Kashmir company, it will sign a supply contract to the changer saying, okay, I want this level of quality, I want this color, I want this yield, with this micron. So everything relies on the changer. If the changer is not able to provide, to deliver on that contract, then he will lose money.
Yes.
But there is a contract. And on the other side, the herders and the changers, they work together, but they work without supply contracts, which means it's not formalized. One way to actually better connect the upstream and the downstream is to train the herders, and especially the herders which are grouped into organizations.
Where you
Yes.
have more productivity.
Yes, where you have more productivity, where you're able to influence the practices of a number of people, to say, okay, this is what the processors want. They want this quality. And for that, that means you have to work on it. If I take an example, what we are doing with the cooperative we work with, we are working on sorting and grading, which are simple practices which can be put in place by the herders
Yes.
in order for them to better answer the requests of the processors, of the
Training herdsmen, okay.
of the customers.
Yes.
This is very important. Those herder organizations also have to...
But still you need changer.
Not necessarily. In our case, the cooperatives, they are able to deliver on their own
To the producer.
to the producer. We're still speaking about...
Yeah, because now economies of scale is better than the one person.
Yes.
That's already cooperatives.
Because of the collective management, indeed.
And price is good.
And prices...
Not price war in between them if they were individually separately.
So price is good, yeah, price is good. There is no price rise in between cooperative members because the tarification is set by the cooperative. It's a collective decision.
So these things are set in 5 summons in Bayonne already?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've already worked on those practices from the herders. We've also had a very good level of cooperation but from the processors, which, for instance, sent some of their own staff to train the herders and the cooperative members because they believe it's important that they can actually do part of the work that the processors do. At the moment when the processors receive the cashmere in the factory, they have to sort it themselves. But the herders can do it, the cooperative can do it. Yeah.
Do they somehow pay some prepayment partially to them?
Yes, and this is a very important point. There are 2 important points with payment. The first one is advance payment. As you mentioned, a cooperative is not a limited liability company, which is that it has a limited ability to raise funds, to raise capital. So it's important that the processors are ready to pay significant enough amounts of advance payments so that the cooperatives can purchase the cashmere from their members. The second thing is that if the herders, the cooperative members, commit to improving the quality of the product, of the cashmere, by sorting, by grading, by genetic breeding, and so on, then on the other side, the processors have to be ready to pay a price premium for this. Yeah.
For that, at least you need certain kind of, even smaller, some kind of guarantee of quality. Do you certificate?
Exactly. So indeed, part of the program, a big part of the program, is to work on a certification scheme, on a label for sustainable cashmere.
Okay.
As you mentioned, and especially, I mean, both for domestic and export markets, but especially for export markets, the customers want to be sure that the approach which is being implemented will be sustainable in time. And that the credentials of the value chain, the sustainable credential, is corresponding to something that is proven, assessed, evaluated. We have started working this year on a scheme which would take into account both individual practices of the herders on land management, pastoral management, quality improvement, better resilience, and also collective practices at the PUG level, cooperative level.
So you give certificate to the part of value chain, or you give certificate to the product?
So, as you mentioned, I think, yeah, indeed, we work mostly on the upstream of the value chain, which is the herders' practices and cooperative practices. If we want to work on the, let's say, the full scope of the value chain, there should be some things which should be included, additional practices, especially from the processors. I don't know, environmental and social impact of the processors. And that's among the things that we are trying to think about at the moment in order to extend this certification scheme to the, let's say, the downstream of
So you see that important part of this value chain certification of what you have just now described, which is mostly the process at least, right?
Yes.
And if possible, later on our product. Well, I understand this Kashmir, sustainable Kashmir project is long-run project. You cannot do overnight. But good thing is you have started in the best Kashmir producers area. So I would like to just to thank you for doing that, for also the French government and the European Union helping to help Mongolians in this big headache of for many years we have it. So hopefully it will be a substantial step forward for the solutions. And I would like to thank you and your team for the wonderful work you are doing in Mongolia.
Thank you very much for receiving me today. Indeed, I would really like to prove this, that this little experiment we're making would prove successful and could be replicated to other parts of Mongolia.
Thank
you
you
very much.
Thank you. За хүн үзэгчдээ өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор энэ хязгааргүй малын эмчнэр ба агрономичид гэж байгууллагыг Монгол төлөөлж байгаа ноён Romain Brillie оролцлоо. Их баярлалаа.